Welcome back to the Charlotte FC podcast. I'm your host, Nick Finelli. Today we've got someone I've known for a while, and it's been a long time coming to have him on. From growing up in Sacramento to interning with Real Salt Lake and eventually moving across the country, he carved out an impressive path in soccer communications. He was part of Crown Legacy's inaugural season, has helped launch kit campaigns, and now plays a key role in shaping how Charlotte FC is represented in the community and across media. Please welcome to the show Senior Communications Coordinator for Charlotte FC, Trent Slagle. It's time for the Charlotte FC podcast. Trent, welcome.
Hey, Nick, how are you? Yeah, happy to be here. It's definitely been a long time coming.
Yes, definitely. So, all right, give us your elevator pitch about Trent. We got 15 seconds. What do we need to know about Trent?
From Sacramento, California, I grew up loving soccer, watching soccer, went to college at Utah Valley University, and that's how I ended up interning at Real Salt Lake. Honestly got really lucky, found an internship there, and then from there that helped me get a full-time job over here at Charlotte FC and moved to the East Coast and have been loving it ever since.
Awesome. So currently your role is the Senior Coordinator for Communications with Charlotte FC. So what is that really?
Yeah, so my role more than anything, I handle primarily our brand, our community partnership initiatives on a communication side. So I handle all the media relations when it comes to anything that is happening off the field for Charlotte FC. On a communication side, I'm involved in some way. And then I also work with our Spanish speaking players to do any of our Spanish media relations. So I work with Pep and Kerwin quite a bit to make sure that we make sure their stories get out there as well.
That's great. And I guess with all the Spanish media too, that you work directly with them. So give me an example of a daily task or a weekly task that might have to do with you spreading the word and helping communicate about the community. Maybe something that's happened this year that you're like, hey, it's a pretty regular thing, but I do this all the time.
I think one thing I love about my role is my job is a very much an actively pitching role. My role is on a daily and weekly basis. My job is to come up with and think of new ideas to promote the brand in the community in different ways. One place that we've definitely found a really strong way to get Charlotte FC's name out there to maybe a community that you don't think of with Charlotte FC at first glance is kind of those morning lifestyle TV shows. So I do a lot of talking with local TV stations kind of on a weekly basis of how we can get into different TV stations and get in the market and talk about whether it's the match coming up that weekend, giveaways, stuff like that. And then probably the other half of my days, more long-term planning for, bigger campaigns that we might have, like kit launches, community impact reports, stuff like that.
Nice. So a lot of this, like you said, just not the stuff that's going on with the pitch, but basically as the brand of Charlotte FC, what is that being shown or how is that being represented? And then how is the media talking about those things in relation to all of that? Because that just brings the brand notice. I mean, you have your own branding, and that's what's great about a lot of things today. It's like you can actually do that, but also it helps to reach people where they might not be paying attention.
Exactly. And that's my whole goal, right? We talk results on the pitch will always help. Good play on the field lifts all boats, right? But my job is to make sure that no matter what happens on the field, we're still being talked about in different ways. One thing that we talk about is Charlotte FC, as much as it's really grown and really become a staple in the Charlotte community, we're not quite on an NFL level in some ways. So we need to be actively, we need to be actively having people talk about us. And, that's through, and exactly what you said, that's not just going to our sports talk radio or our more sports specific outlets. That's reaching out to Axios or, more of the non-traditional sports places, kind of more of those traditional outlets per se.
Nice. And you talked about, of course, working with Spanish players and that and the Spanish media. So where does the bilingual? I know lots of people live in California. Of course, younger people also have been having more opportunities to be bilingual in double languages. Where did it come from for you? Where did that origin, and how has it impacted what you've been able to do? Because I think some people underestimate, especially older people, don't realize how many doors are probably open by you having that ability.
Oh yeah, it's helped me a ton in my career. Woody would probably know this better, but it was definitely, I think, a big plus to helping me get myself here. But I definitely didn't grow up speaking Spanish as much as I was around Spanish speaking people through growing up. I didn't pick it up, unfortunately. The way I picked it up is I lived in Honduras in Central America for about a year. I was out there doing a church mission for about a year and really just picked up the language fast. I kind of joke, it's easy to pick up a language when you can't, when no one speaks English around you, you got to pick it up pretty
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
Pick it up or you don't eat kind of thing. So I was lucky enough to kind of just be immersed in it and I picked it up pretty quick. Will obviously admit it's definitely not as good as a native speaking person, but I still can still do pretty good. And yeah, I always joke if you give me 2 minutes, I'll get my Spanish brain will click back on and I'll be right back in it.
that's awesome. That's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah, I definitely feel like immersing yourself in another place, like where you're saying, or you're just forced to, it really accelerates everything. And I think about our players that come over here from other countries, and we want to help them get the language, but
Mhm.
they also pick it up so easily too because they have to. I think Adil Simulanda, like
Oh yeah.
English, and all of a sudden he's like speaking everything English, and he's not afraid to go to a press conference or anything. He's got all these questions being asked to him in English. So different things like that. I think it's hard. I think it's kind of neat in the way that football in America is getting all these players from different countries, and they're able to assimilate and be a part of it and pick up the English, and it just kind of molds everybody together. I think that's doesn't happen in any other sport as much as this.
Oh, 100%. I mean, NBA and MLB are definitely getting more international, but soccer is the one place where it's truly a melting pot. I see our players picking up the language like that almost every day.
Yeah, and they do it. The players that have traveled to other countries that are English speaking, they've said the same thing. They're like, "Yep, I just had to learn. I had no other choice. How am I going to know what I'm supposed to be doing?"
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing Christian Pulisic do post-match interviews in Italian now, and no one
Right,
blinks an eye. So yeah,
right,
it's crazy.
exactly. So before this role that you currently have with Charlotte FC, you were working primarily with the Crown Legacy and their inaugural season. What did you do there, and what was your takeaway from working in that end?
Yeah, I mean, so that was, it feels like a blur now. So I originally got brought over to be the communications coordinator for Crown Legacy. And like you said, in its inaugural season, kind of similar to what I'm doing now. My job was not only to tell the sporting stories, but to really, help launch a brand. Part of the reason I had a lot of experience working MLS Next Pro in MLS Next Pro's first season in 22 when I was with Real. However, came on as a communications coordinator, but that role quickly shifted into kind of being a jack of all trades, do a little bit of everything kind of thing. So much so
Mhm.
that my second season with Crown Legacy, my title got changed to business operations coordinator because I was touching every single part of the business. I was planning theme nights. I was while still being communications focused because when you're at Next Pro side, the best way to get your name out there is through earned media. I was working on community initiatives, ticketing promos, as working on some paid social marketing, all those kind of things. I really just had my hand in every single part of the business, which I think really helped me today because then I was so used to talking cross departmental. I
Mhm.
definitely didn't do it all by myself. As you know,
Right.
we have a great large team here and with a bunch of different departments, but I kind of became in a lot of ways the point guard of kind of working with different people and distributing out to whether it was externally to people outside the company or working internally to make sure things got done. I worked a lot within our organization to make sure Crown Legacy, especially in that first season, was the success that it was.
Right. For something even as simple as like kit launches and stuff like that. It's like, hey, this is what we're gonna have as our launch. Let's talk to the content team. What can we make? Let's talk to the marketing team. What can we do? So that's just kind of you're the cog and all that, making all those people's things spin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it was for the first year. And it definitely was a little bit of a whirlwind at first, but I learned to love just like being in meetings and being in conversations that I never thought I'd be thinking. I never thought I'd be thinking of putting together, a partnership deck and plan for, Crown Legacy or stuff like that. Like, but those were conversations I got to be in, and I really, and I felt like it really helped grow myself on a career wise for sure.
Nice. So looking back, like you said, you got lucky at Real Salt Lake. How did that happen? And what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, 100%. I say I got lucky because I definitely took a non-traditional route, at least compared to the other interns that I knew that worked at Real Salt Lake prior and the ones that I worked with at Real Salt Lake. First I started on our team, sorry, at our university school newspaper. I was writing for ours as a journalist for the school newspaper at Utah Valley University. And most of the people I worked with were like sports information directors, SIDs, that work more on the team side of things. Um, I applied and then I definitely felt like I was a little underqualified at first. However, luckily my boss, and may he rest in peace, John Jenna, who unfortunately passed away of ALS a couple of years ago, he saw something in me and he told my who became my boss, Meg Van Dyke, who I know you interviewed a couple seasons back, basically was
Mhm.
like, we got to get this kid. Let's hire him. I think my Spanish was a big part of that as well because I was able to work with the Spanish speaking team and player and Real Salt Lake
Mhm.
definitely had a much larger Spanish speaking contingency. And then from there, it was primarily a sporting communications position. So the stuff I'm doing now wasn't as involved,
Right.
but I really learned more than anything, I learned the importance of relationship building, working with different outlets and understanding why different stories work better in different places. And then, especially on the other side, working on understanding the importance of relationships with the players and with the coaches and why those are important as well. And
Right.
then and with that, I got to build and grow. MLS Next Pro was in its first season while I was there. Real Salt Lake's definitely a little bit smaller staff than we are here. And so as an intern, I fully took the reins of Real Monarchs, their MLS Next Pro team, and handled all the communication side for them. And my goal was to really tell the stories of those guys and the academy kids coming through and more of a player pathway communications. But
Yeah.
I learned a ton there.
Yeah. Definitely with players and coaches, you got to know when you can go to them, what you can ask them
Mhm.
to do, what they're willing to do. It
Yeah,
was kind of like in a way, a jump over to Charlotte was very similar. You had already done it. So you're like, yeah, I can do this here. I can.
exactly. Yeah, when I saw the role open up over here, that was exactly my thought was, oh, I've done this, I know this, I know I could do it kind of thing. And it made me really eager and also confident while interviewing, which was great.
So were you, because I mean, you could have been happy there. What made you want to shift or change?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, at that time, I was an intern, and then the way they set up their internships, or at least at the time, was they run through the season. And so then after the season, they wanted to keep me on, but they weren't sure if there was going to be a full-time role for me open just yet. So I kind of moved into this part-time position that wasn't really an internship anymore, but it wasn't
Hmm.
full-time just yet. And I had a really great boss, and I really enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed Utah as well, but it kind of became one of those things where I was looking for the next step and I was looking for a full-time role. And my boss Meg actually knew Woody when I saw the role open up, and we thought the role would be right for me. And Meg knew Woody and knew that he would be a really good person to learn from, and so kind of just took a shot and went for it, and didn't really know anything
Nice.
about Charlotte to begin with, but it was well worth it.
So this is year three for you, right?
Yeah, season three.
Yeah, awesome. So you talked about earlier growing up in Sacramento, California. So what did growing up look like for little Trent?
Yeah, growing up in Sacramento was awesome. It's funny, growing up, there's things that I think everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to get out. And then, as you get older, you kind of like look back and you're like, oh no, things were pretty good out there. I grew up in a small little community called Rancho Marietta, about 30 minutes out. I tell everybody, like, I had to drive 30 minutes for high school, 30 plus minutes for sports at least. We were in this little neighborhood that was kind of out in the countryside and just kind of away from everything. And so growing up, the majority of things we did were kind of in within that community. We had an elementary school out there, but so Little League, rec soccer was out there and all that kind of stuff. And then as I got older, I started playing club soccer, traveling around a lot for that. And
Oh,
so I
cool.
would travel 35, 40 minutes for soccer practice. I played football. I shouldn't say I played football. I was the kicker for our football team. And I
Were you a
did a
good
lot.
kicker?
What? I think I
What was your
was.
longest field goal?
In game, it was a 47.
Nice.
Yeah, in practice, I got a little bit farther than that, but we never quite, I definitely wasn't consistent enough to, be trusted with a 50 plus yard field goal during games, which I totally understand. My football team was not very good. We went 0 and 10 my senior year.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
maybe you got a
But
lot more opportunities because they weren't scoring touchdowns. They're like, oh, put Trent in. We'll at least get three.
yeah, we had to get there to get three though. So sometimes that wasn't too hot either. Besides living a little bit farther away from everything, it was a pretty typical suburban lifestyle. Went to school in, I think it's population wise the largest suburb of Sacramento. It's called Elk Grove. My dad grew up in the same town. My grandparents were around there and, had family close, had good friends. And Sac Republic, we were season ticket members for that. Went to a lot of those games growing up and was a big Sacramento Kings fan as well. And all those, yeah.
There was a time that they were considered to be an MLS team. It kind of faded away, I think, because of money more than anything else. But if that happens ever, would you be like, hey, I want to go back to Sacramento? Or are you kind of like an East Coast boy now?
Think I'm more of an East Coast boy now. I will say that the Sac Republic MLS bid going away is definitely it's a tough conversation to talk about for me because I was very happy and excited for it to come, and I remember everything about that. And so when it got taken away, it was a shot in the heart a little bit. But obviously, Sacramento does come around and get that bid again. Like I would be super happy for the city. There's a great soccer landscape. I think they deserve it. But
Mhm.
I very much enjoy the East Coast. I think I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at and don't ever want to say like never say never kind of thing. But as of right now, that's definitely not in the plans to go back to Sacramento.
So when you were growing up, what was your first teenager job?
I did a lot of odd jobs playing two sports that were like in similar
Yeah.
seasons. It was hard to, especially football, as much as soccer was year round, football felt year round as well because I felt like I needed to be at everything for it. So I
Hmm.
did a lot of reffing. I did work for this older man in the community, just needed help with like, he was in his 90s and needed help with just like daily tasks and chores.
Yeah.
And so it's a job I did for a while I was in high school, but it was mainly just reffing in that in high school at least.
Nice. That's cool. Now, where did the soccer interest come in, and where did the interest to be a part of kind of this culture that you're in now?
Yeah, like most kids, you start out, at least where I grew up, we started out with little league and you started out with soccer, right? Played basketball a little bit as well. And soccer was, frankly, I think soccer was the sport I was best at. And
Yeah.
I have an older sister, and my dad coached my older sister's soccer team, and they went to club a couple years before I did, and did a little bit more of the travel stuff. And so I saw that and really enjoyed it and fell in love with it. And I did it till I was 18, 19, until I graduated high school. It's funny because growing up, I never thought about working in sports. It's just not something that like really
Mhm.
computed as something you could do. And then when I was in
What were
college,
you thinking about if you were
um, I'm obviously in the communications field. My dad's in the communications field as well,
okay?
but more on the business side of things. And so I just kind of, when I was in college, I just kind of assumed I would try to get into some agency and work from there. And then I
Hmm.
started writing on the sports side for our school newspaper. And then even then, I still thought I would just like kind of go into an agency. And then
Right.
honestly, I applied to Real Salt Lake and they had the application open back in October, but they didn't start interviewing until January. So when I like got an interview, I was like a little surprised. I was like, oh, I almost kind of forgot about this. And then so honestly, Real Salt Lake was my first experience of like, oh, this is something I could do.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about going to Honduras, and that's kind of where you kind of immerse yourself in the language. Was there a time especially in your communications business, that you're like, holy cow, like me speaking this other language just made the hugest difference. If I wasn't here or someone wasn't able to translate this or do this, like what was the first moment that you saw like this is actually a good thing for everybody, not just you personally?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the one that stands out the most is I was actually helping out the Panthers with a kind of they do this kind of look ahead for the season with media members. And it's all the new state and this one was like kind of all the new stadium features throughout the year. We don't typically do one with Charlotte FC just because they're the same features and they come out
Hmm.
brand new before the Panther season. And so I was there and Telemundo was there, kind of going around and talking to people as well. And then they needed kind of just like a general Panther spokesperson at one point for Telemundo. And they didn't have a Spanish speaker in the room besides myself. And so about like 5 minutes before we actually recorded it, uh Panthers and Emmy Darkea from Telemundo, who's become a really good friend, both were like, hey, can you basically be the spokesperson? Can you do this? We'll give you the
Right.
talking points. And so threw on a Panthers polo and I said, let's do it. And I mean, what you can attest to this, I was really nervous. I was not thrilled that I had to do it at first, but it
Yeah,
was one of
yeah,
those things where it's like, it shows how important the language was and how necessary it can be.
yeah. Now, you talked a little bit about Meg and your other mentors and even Woody. Um, what is maybe something that you've kind of gotten from just being around them, or certain things that they've told you that just sticks with you? Is there anything that you kind of took from those relationships?
Yeah, I think I can point to like one with Meg. I remember just like learning more than anything, like your internal relationships matter just as much as your external relationships. That's something that I really try to take into account with everything I do. Sometimes in communications, especially, you got to be the bearer of bad news, and that sucks.
Right,
However, I really try my best in everything I do. When there's something that involves a different department, reaching out to them and making sure, like, before I ask you to do this, is this feasible? What's your guys' bandwidth? And so that's something that I've really taken with me, and that's something I definitely learned from her. Um,
nice.
and Woody's definitely a big proponent of that as well. And then I think Woody and I have really developed a good, I would say not just a good working relationship, but a good friendship. But one thing I've learned, and it's very much his emphasis, not just for me, but for our communications department as a whole, is like really emphasizing local media and being with the people who care about you most, kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times in communications, people want to shoot for the national story, or it might not be the best, it might not be the best person to tell that story, the national story, the international story, the biggest outlet possible. And I
Hmm.
think he really told me and really helped me understand was the local media are the ones that know about you the most and care about you the most. And if you can win the local market, like the rest will fall in place, kind of thing. And so that's something that I've
Right.
really taken an emphasis on in my work for sure.
That's cool. Now, thinking about your short career here, you've talked about a lot of things. Is there some sort of sacrifice that you've made that you're like, okay, this is a decision, almost like it's not no turning back, but you kind of felt like that at the moment? Like, hey, I just got to go for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind is moving out here in general and moving
Yeah,
across the country. And, frankly, I didn't, this is no shame to Charlotte. I love Charlotte to death now. I didn't think about Charlotte much really growing up. It was, it's
right.
probably the same way people don't think about Sacramento much growing up.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah, I was
and
going to say the
so,
same thing.
moving out here was, taking a risk and understanding that I'm going to sacrifice things like family time, or there are going to be vacations, there are going to be maybe a wedding or two I'm going to miss. And
Hmm.
that's it. I'm not going to lie, in those moments it sucks sometimes, but that was the decision I made, and I think it's been worth it for the most part because I've really created a great community of friends out here, and really love my role out here. So definitely, that's the biggest sacrifice I think I've made, but it's been well worth it.
Cool. What would you say is the hardest part about your job right now?
Hardest part about my job, um
Yeah.
I think the hardest part about my job right now, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot, is kind of, I know what works for us, and I know what things we can do, and I know which outlets and people I can go to, and it's like, and I know the story is going to get done. I know that these things, and I'm not, and those are great things that usually do provide great results for us. But now a lot of my role is thinking about, okay, how can we elevate this? what are maybe different avenues that I haven't looked at yet or we haven't looked at as a department to kind of improve the brand communications. So I think that's probably the hardest part of my job right now is because I think, Corelli, who was in this role before me, like I think she set a really great
Right.
foundation. Woody obviously has done a great job to build the brand from the beginning here. And so we've set a really good foundation. I think the bar is understandably raised really high. And so now it's like, okay, how can we improve upon this and do even
Right.
better? Yeah,
Right. I mean, because the club on the pitch, off the pitch, they want to be relevant and they want to
exactly.
be a part of people's lives and helpful and also have people have fun and entertain and enjoy. So a little bit of everything. Um,
Exactly.
what do you enjoy most about it? What's the one thing you're like, man, I didn't even realize I worked 6 hours, 12 hours today, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's the strategy, the more strategic part of this role, and then seeing that payoff. I love the campaigns that I've been able to work on since I've been into this role. The two kit launch campaigns are like obviously my two biggest things to date. And really
Yeah.
just, really seen, especially the third kit, the heritage kit. I know like I worked with you as part of that as well, of like and planning that PR strategy months in advance and working with content to make sure that we're aligned and working with everyone partnerships everyone to make sure that we're aligned and then seeing that fully roll out is my favorite part of the role for sure.
Nice. What would you like to do in your career that maybe you haven't done yet, or you're looking forward to maybe 10, 15 years down the road? Be like, hey, this would be cool if Trent did this.
I think I, it really depends because in some ways I'm not sure if I see myself in sports in 10, 15 years. Things change and come and go. And so if it's more in a sports stuff that I see our friends at the TSC level and Woody as well work on more of like
Mhm.
those stadium renovations, those big projects. Like that's something that I would love to eventually, work my way into to where I'm a more prominent role in. Or I think eventually leading a team and teaching is something that I would love to move into like more of a teaching role at a university level someday. Or having a team and being able to mentor, people that are coming up through the industry are probably things that I think about the most.
So outside of Charlotte FC, what are some of your main interests and passions?
I love to be outdoors. I still play soccer on Mondays. I like to go out on hikes when I can and just be out in national parks and national forests. That was one of the big perks of going to college in Utah was I had a bunch of national parks near me. I'm going to Great Smoky National Park this weekend. So that's definitely one of those things. I'm just a sports fan overall. I will say like the 49ers are probably my first love. And so I watch the San Francisco 49ers, obviously a Panthers fan as well. Now I just want to see the city do great.
Nice.
It's stoppage time!
What job would you do if you weren't working in your current job now?
Probably still in communications, just probably in an agency somewhere.
Okay. Do you have a must-do personal ritual or habit?
But there's no like ritual or anything specific. Trying to go to the gym every morning, but that's mixed
That can
bag of whether or
change.
not that actually happens.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite unplugged activity? You talked about hiking. Is that something that you do, or is there, besides that, or is there other things that you tend to do?
Yeah, no, I definitely disc golf is actually one of my bigger hobbies. I really enjoyed a disc golf, and that's definitely probably one of my favorite ways to disconnect.
Oh, nice. Do you have a go-to snack when watching a match?
Talkies. The little red like corn tortilla chip.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Which design impresses you more, interior or exterior?
Interior.
Okay. And do you find starting a project or finishing one more gratifying?
Finishing.
Okay. And then when you get away from all this, because communications is a 24/7 job for the most part, that's at least that's what it seems like to me. What do you do to go recharge? How do you get away from all this?
I either rot on my couch and watch Shrinking or some TV show. Uh,
Do you binge watch a lot of shows? Like, is that something you do just to like, all right, I can get my mind off if I just watch something and just sit there and do it?
yeah, that's usually the way I like when I get back from work, especially if it's a long day at work. I'm usually just go and rot on the couch for an hour or two and watch. Yeah, it usually binge watching. It's usually a show I've seen a million times, but I'm just like, I don't want to think. I'm just going to turn it back on. The Office is one of those. Brooklyn Nine-Nine's one of them as well. Just one of those shows that I know.
My younger son, that's what he would do. Is Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like he just Sunny in Philadelphia. Like those are ones just always playing. I'm like, haven't you seen this like 40 times? He's like, yeah, but it's like it helps get everything away.
Oh yeah, I need to be in a certain mindset to watch a new show. Like I had to
pay attention.
Yeah, I had to be mentally capable to pay attention.
Right. All right. Last question: if you're a current player on the Charlotte FC club squad, what player would you most be like? Doesn't have to be position, but kind of like how they are in their demeanor and how they act.
Ooh,
be a combo.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, I was a right and left back growing up, so I'd probably say Nathan Byrne is like play wise the person I'd try to be most similar to. Definitely was nowhere near as good as that, obviously. Personality wise, I don't know.
Who's somebody that brings? I mean, to me, it seems like you bring people together. So is there somebody that brings the team together?
I think
but it's not like the loud voice that brings them all together.
You see, like I think like Addy is one of those people. I think Priv, when he's playing, is one of those people as well. Like, obviously Westy, with the way he plays, is the connective glue and tissue. I feel weird comparing myself to any of these players because I think that obviously they're much better than I. They're much better players, and they're all great people and stuff like that. But I think the way I am, I think kind of being that, like, from a work setting, kind of being that connective glue, those are players I kind of think of in that way.
Yeah. Hey, Trent, it was great. I appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time since we really need to do this, but I'm glad we were able to get a chance for people to know who you are.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for having me on and for letting me talk your ear off. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks to Trent for joining us today, from his Sacramento roots and time at Real Salt Lake to his work with Crown Legacy and now Charlotte FC. His journey shows the value of relationships, adaptability, and stepping into new opportunities, even if it means moving across the country. His role might not be on the pitch, but it is critical in shaping how the club connects with fans, media, and the city of Charlotte. As always, thanks for listening to the Charlotte FC podcast. Be sure to follow, rate, and share with fellow supporters, and we'll be back soon with more stories from the people who make the club what it is. Until next time, enjoy the day.